Right, guys, what's up? Going to be bringing you some more Premier League action this season. If that is something you're interested in, then hit the like and also comment below in the comment box and let me know what kind of content you like to see. Do you want to see me sort of do weekly recaps or reactions to Newcastle matches, as I'm a lifelong Newcastle fan? Is there any other kind of content you like to watch? Well, now's the time to tell me. And obviously what you guys tell me is the kind of content I'll try and deliver for you. So there's something to look out for. Maybe I'll make another YouTube channel and put it there. I'm not sure just yet on what I'm going to do, but I do want to do more football related content though. It's something I love. I'm really looking forward to this season, and so I wanted to kick it off with my Premier League predictions all the way from the champions down to 20th rock bottom position in the relegation zone. I'm going to be basing this off what I've seen from these teams, whether it be watching them in the championship or watching them last season. Also, additionally, what their transfer window has been like, and sort of a gut reaction as well on a number of different variables and factors that I'll do my best to explain throughout. We'll get through the relegation ones pretty fast and the champions one pretty fast as well, and then we'll talk about this sort of mid portion a little bit more, because I think this is actually a very exciting season. I would argue that from probably around 8th, you could even say like 6th position to 17th is incredibly close, and even then the relegation battle could be insanely close as well, which we will get back into in a moment. First though, if you do have a Premier League Fantasy League team, I'm going to link in the description box my link to the official Premier League Fantasy League. I've made a league. There's like 100 teams already in there. If you want to pick yourself against me and my community and see how well you fare against us, can you beat us, then by all means join that. It's completely free. If you don't have an account, it's super, super fast to make and get yourself involved, and that would be awesome. I'd love to see you guys in there. That being said, though, let's jump in to our predictions. So in 20th position, I'm going to start with the relegation zones. Unfortunately, I think this is where the Cinderella story takes a bit of a dark, sad turn. I don't see Luton Town making it out of this season alive in the Premier League, just to be completely honest. I think their squad depth is severely lacking from what I saw last season of them, albeit I didn't see a huge amount, I will be honest. What I did see of them, it was an amazing story. They've got a lot of fight, they've got a lot of grit and determination. You have to be promoted from the Championship. It's one of the hardest leagues in the world. The schedule alone is crazy. They managed to make it here. It's amazing. But I'm looking at their depth of squad. It's not much. I'm looking at their transfer window. They've brought in quite a few players, but no players that you're really looking at and saying, wow, that is a standout, crazy player. They've got Kabore in from Man City. That's not bad. And Kamba as well from Aston Villa. Not bad. But apart from that, Ross Barkley maybe, but he's now, what, like 32 or something, and it's been a while since he played, at the top flight of Premier League football with Chelsea or Everton. So I can't really see Luton Town as having much of a hope. I think they'd have to make their home games a fortress, like a bastion of points, and squeak out some surprise shocks against some of the top flight teams, maybe a draw here or win there. And even then, I don't think it's going to be enough. I think they're going to get destroyed when they travel to other cities and other stadiums. So unfortunately for Luton, I have them at rock bottom in 20th position. In 19th position, I'm going to go with I've gone back and forth on this, to be honest, quite a few times. I think I'm going to go with Bournemouth. I don't think Bournemouth are going to survive this season, to be completely honest with you. I look at their transfer window. It's not horrendous, but there's not really that much for me to get excited about, especially when you consider that I view Lerma and Francis going across to Crystal Palace is actually like a double whammy, if you want to call it that. Not only are they losing two players that are actually solid, released on a free agent for Lerma in particular, but additionally you're losing into a team that I think are going to be battling down there towards the bottom end of the half come the end of this season in Crystal Palace. I think that hits you twice as hard. And I'm just not that hopeful for Bournemouth this season, to be completely honest with you. I think they're going to finish in 19th spot. I think they're going to struggle. Now, in 18th, I went back and forth between a few teams, and I'm going to end up going with Nottingham Forest to come into 18th position. I think this is going to be second season syndrome. Additionally, they've made a couple of good signings, I think. Elanga from Man United and Chris Wood from Newcastle. Obviously, Chris Wood in particular, I saw a lot last season. There was a bit of an eyebrow raised, and understandably so, when we paid that much money for him. Signing him from Burnley. It was more a case of signing him from a rival, though, I believe. And he did do a job. Yes, the price tag was too heavy, but he will do a job for Nottingham Forest this season. If he plays like 30 games, I think he'll bang himself 5 or 10 goals. He'll do a job. He'll do things for Nottingham Forest. Will it be enough to keep them up? I don't think it will. They also have lost quite a few players. They've freed up, I would say, a lot of wages, losing Jesse Lingard, that experiment definitely didn't work. Andre Ayew, another player they also lost. So I don't know. I see Nottingham Forest as being, unfortunately, just getting into a very scrappy relegation fight almost from the start of the season and just gradually being choked out and dropping out in 18th position. I will say, though, I'm fairly confident Luton Town will go down. Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, and the next couple of teams I'm going to talk about now, I think they're all interchangeable, in all honesty. I think these are very much interchangeable teams. So in 17th position, I'm going to have Sheffield United. That might be a bit of a surprise to some people. And again, if you are surprised or you disagree vehemently with any of my picks, then by all means, let me know in the comment section below and which one I got wrong, or just give me your entire list of how you think you've done, or link me a video of your own. I'd be very fascinated to watch. That being said, Sheffield United, I think, have done fairly poorly in the transfer window. They've lost Ndiaye, who I think is a very good player. He's gone across to Marseille. They lost Sander Berg as well to Burnley, which is another player that they wouldn't have wanted to lose. And they haven't really brought in anything fantastic as far as I'm concerned. Nothing that really, grabs my attention. It makes me think, wow, that's a fantastic, that's like a marquee signing. Nothing like that at all. And I think Sheffield United are going to struggle this season. I really do. I think they're going to be down there. As I said, interchangeable. Maybe Bournemouth survive instead of them. Maybe Nottingham Forest do. But I think Sheffield United are going to be seriously struggling come the end of this season. In 16th position, I'm going with Wolves, surprisingly. Wolves, another team that has done, honestly, pretty pitifully in the transfer window. And they're a team that has really struggled alongside Nottingham Forest and Sheffield United, I would say, as this post-COVID pinch where a lot of teams are now struggling economically and financially, and you're seeing them offload loads of players on free agents to try and free up some of those wages, to try and make sure the bank balance starts to get in the green as opposed to the red. So they've lost Moutinho on a free agency, who was pretty important for them over the last few seasons. They've also lost Ruben Neves across to Saudi Arabia, and a slew of other players like Connor Cody to Leicester, and a bunch of other players as well, which isn't necessarily bad if they're dead weight and, Wolves feel like they're going to have no use for them anymore. But they've only signed in a grand total of, let me just double check this, 3 players. So Tom King, they got in Matt Doherty, who thinks going to be a good signing, to be fair, from Atletico Madrid, and also Leo Lopez in from Grasshoppers. 3 players in and probably like 15 or 20 players out. Squad depth is significantly hampered by this, especially considering they've lost players like Raul Jimenez as well, to go into the list of other players they've lost. And I just feel like it's going to hurt them. I think it's going to hurt them significantly. They're going to be down there towards the bottom end of the half and very well likely into relegation sort of zone territory, especially if they don't start very well. After Wolves, I feel like I'm going to say it's going to be Crystal Palace. Now, Crystal Palace for me are in a similar sort of situation to Wolves in the sense that I look at their transfer window so far, and again, put a caveat on this, as I record this video, a lot more transfers could come through, and those transfers could drastically change some of these teams' positions. Like Tottenham is one that I'm going to definitely be talking about in a little bit with the whole Harry Kane situation. But Crystal Palace, they've brought in Lerma, Francis, and Franca, 2 of those players from Bournemouth, which is obviously great to steal a couple players away from rivals. That's it. They've lost Zaha, who has been a talisman for Crystal Palace for the longest time. They must have had some kind of dirt on him, honestly. I don't know how they kept him for as long as they did. I remember at one point Man United were knocking on the door, Newcastle knocking on the door. I remember Liverpool were heavily linked with him at one stage. And for one reason or another, it never worked out for them. They finally lost him as he goes across to Turkey for Galatasaray. And I think he's going to be a huge miss, like a massive miss. And they haven't really, as far as I can tell, they haven't really filled in the blanks. Milivojevic as well, they lost, who's another player, like a squad depth kind of player. So I just don't feel good about Crystal Palace. I don't feel good about them really doing much else than like finishing around 15th, 16th position. I don't really see them as falling into the relegation zone. I think the cut-off point here is Wolves. I think Wolves, Sheffield United, Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth, and Luton are the 5 teams that I expect to be really scrapping it out at the bottom of the league. After Crystal Palace, I'm going to go with Fulham. I definitely don't think that Fulham are going to be in contention to get relegated, but I don't think it's going to be the high-flying, kind of crazy start or crazy season as we saw last season. They've done some decent business. They got Jimenez in from Wolves and also Bastian from Ajax. I've heard some rumours, though, that they may lose Mitrovic. I completely forgot his name. I don't know how. I loved him at Newcastle. They may lose Alexander Mitrovic across to Saudi Arabia. There's some rumours about that one happening. If they do, I think that'll be a hard hit to Fulham, and it may drop them into sort of the same territory as Wolves as far as I'm concerned. But for the most part, they've been pretty mediocre in the transfer window. I don't think they've done badly by any stretch, but they've definitely not done well. And I feel like, 15th, 14th position is pretty fair for Fulham, all things considered. In 13th spots, I am going to go ahead and put in Brentford. I think Brentford have done a lot of business. They've brought a lot of players in. The problem is that when I look at the players they've brought in, I'm not really blown away by any of them. Maybe Collins in from Wolves is a pretty solid signing. They got Romeo Beckham, Ji-So Kim as well, and a few other players smattered in for good measure. They got decent squad depth, though. That's one thing that the Brentford do have. And they're also a very difficult team to beat at their home ground. So I think that they'll be able to scrape out and, grind out quite a few points at there and bag themselves like a 13th position finish come the end of the season. In 12th position, I'm going with Burnley. I think Burnley are going to do much better than people anticipate. I think they do much better than people expect them to do. I feel like this is a team with Vincent Kompany at the helm that has looked fantastic in the Championship. I've actually been watching a lot of their games, how free-flowing they are, how crisp they're looking. Additionally, their transfer window has been pretty damn good. A lot of signed players, a lot of good business has been pulled off here, and they've lost very few players in the process. Nabbing Berg away from Sheffield United, getting Nathan Redmond in from Besiktas, Trafford in from Man City, amongst another few players that are certainly standouts. I think Burnley have done really solidly in the transfer window so far. I think they've got a very good depth to their squad anyway, and I think 12th is a fair assessment. I think they're going to go above and beyond what a lot of people expect from them this season. In 11th, Everton. For me, they're interchangeable, honestly. You could say Everton are going to finish 12th and Burnley. This is a rough guide. It's roughly where I think they're going to finish in the season. I think Everton are going to do much better than last season. I think Dyche is a fantastic addition to this team, the kind of perfect man for the job to stabilise them and make sure that relegation is not a possibility. He's made a career off keeping Burnley in the Premier League forever, and then surprise, surprise, they got rid of him and they got relegated. It's not really a coincidence. The thing that's holding me back from maybe getting more hype about Everton is the complete lack of business they've done in the transfer window in terms of bringing players in, but it's to be expected because they've had 2 or 3 ridiculous seasons with spending, and a lot of that really hasn't paid off. I mean, the fact they nearly got relegated last season tells you everything, really. They've been in a team that's been in such a weird position, the state of flux, and I think Dyche is going to offer them a bit of stability. Nothing special. I don't see them flying up into top 6 anytime soon, but I think it's a team that needs to be just gradually on the mend, gradually on the rise, and that should be good enough for them. Only picking up Ashley Young on a free transfer and also Dan Juma in from Villarreal, who I think is a good signing, but they've also lost quite a few players. Mina, Townsend, Begovic all going on free agents as well is a rough one, but none of them are necessarily world-beating players that's going to absolutely destroy Everton. So I think 11th, pretty fair, all things considered. In 10th position, I'm going to go with West Ham. I think West Ham are kind of the perfect team to put in that middle-of-the-pack position right now. Obviously, European football may very well harm them a little bit in terms of squad depth. I have heard, though, today that there's rumours, and maybe even as I make this video, it's been confirmed, that Harry Maguire and James Ward-Prowse have been signed for West Ham, and I think that's 2 great signings. Great signings for West Ham. Maguire gets, memed relentlessly, obviously Slabhead. Memed relentlessly for his performances at Man United. I just think it was a bridge too far for him, and the outrageous amount they paid for him as well definitely didn't help matters. The fact is he plays far better at England than he does for Man United, and there's a reason for that. It's the formations that get used. I think if Moyes plays the correct formation for him, which is 3 centre-backs, and allow Maguire to kind of shine a little bit more and iron over his weaknesses, he can actually be a great servant for West Ham. I think he'll win a lot of people back over again when he plays for West Ham if he's used correctly. I think this is a great redemption arc for Harry Maguire and a smart decision for him. and for West Ham as well. I think it's a win-win. And James Ward-Prowse, very, very solid player for Southampton. There was no way he was ever going to stay at Southampton, and now he has moved on. So I think he can do big things at West Ham as well. I think they're both very, very good signings. So West Ham in 10th spot. In 9th position, I am going to go with Brighton. I think Brighton will finish in 9th. I don't see them finishing as highly as they did last season. They've done some very good business, though, but I think all the teams above them are going to be better. So they got Dahoud in, João Pedro in, James Milner. These are fantastic signings, especially James Milner. Even though he's very old now for a professional player at this kind of level, he offers so much like professional kind of experience they can bring to the dressing room. He also can come on as a sub if you need him to and like play a good half an hour and just keep things chill and keep things occupied. Very versatile player as well. I loved him when he was at Newcastle. He did great at Liverpool as well, and I think it's a very, very good signing. Obviously, it did lose Alexi McAllister across to Liverpool, which is a bit of a heavy blow, but I mean, Brighton have always been great when it comes to their business, their transfers. Like this is a squad, this is a club that does things right. A lot of other clubs wish they had the kind of IQ for signing players as Brighton do. They've got a fantastic squad as well. So, I mean, 9th could easily be 7th or 6th. Brighton could easily squeak their way into that top 6 spot, especially as some of the teams I'm about to talk about have also European football to contend with additionally. In 8th position, I'm going to go with Tottenham. Now, this is what I was talking about before with the whole transfer situation. If they lose Harry Kane, which still may happen, then I honestly could put Tottenham down to like 10th and bump West Ham and Brighton up a position. Hell, maybe even below Everton. Because, my God, do Tottenham have problems. They have brought in Kulusevski from Juventus, like fully now. They brought in James Maddison from Leicester, who I think is a very good signing. Mickey van der Ven, who's going to be one for the future for sure. There's a lot of hype around him. Vicario, Solomon, Vélez. They've brought in quite a few good players here, but ultimately Kane has to carry this team so hard with Son. It's like the Son and Kane show. It's so rough. And if they lose Kane, if he does end up going to Bayern or he goes elsewhere, then there's every chance that they will slip down like quite considerably. But I think 8th for me right now is about fair. So the top 7 clubs. I'm going to go in reverse a little bit here. I'm going to go Man City and Arsenal are going to be 1st and 2nd respectively. Man City have lost a few players. They've lost Gundogan. They've lost Riyad Mahrez. These are 2 phenomenal players. Like Gundogan in particular was pretty much their best player for the last sort of 3 months or so of the last season, if not longer, you could argue. And now they've just lost him to Barcelona. That is a huge blow. But the thing with Manchester City is they have such a ridiculous squad depth that I don't think it's going to end up mattering that much. They still have so many players, so much depth that they can just fill in. They've also brought in Kovacic from Chelsea, and they've signed Guardiol as well from Leipzig. These are 2 very good signings, and I just feel like they're still the team to beat. They're still the best team in the league as far as I'm concerned. Even with those couple of lost players, they have tons of squad depth. Arsenal, in the meanwhile, they had a chance last season. They missed their shot. Yes, they had a lot of injuries. Yes, they were a bit unfortunate as well, but ultimately, I think that you look at the squad overall and you just see them as it being a 2-horse race. I think Arsenal are going to be up there. Whether they can beat Man City or not is yet to be seen. I think they're the team that's going to have the most chances, though, of beating them. They've brought in Kai Havertz from Chelsea, Jurrien Timber from Ajax. Declan Rice, of course, is a massive signing from West Ham, who is a player I didn't mention before with West Ham. But they cashed out on him big time, and they have done pretty well of making the most of it. However, I think Declan Rice is going to be a fantastic signing for Arsenal, even if they definitely pay too much money for him. I think he's going to be so good for them. Unleashed a little bit. For the longest time with West Ham, he was basically a defensive midfielder. He was always protecting the defence. I think with Arsenal, you're going to see him going forward a lot more and offering a lot more to that team. So I think Declan Rice is a fantastic signing for them, and Arsenal are looking very, very sharp indeed. I'm going to go down to 7th position, and I'll put Newcastle in 7th position. It hurts me to do this because, obviously, as a Newcastle fan, I'd love to see them repeat what they did last season, but European football is going to be a pain in the ass. Having Thursday night football and then, into the weekend is going to be rough. Our squad depth is nowhere near strong enough yet to withstand that and still keep in the same position in the Premier League. Unless we get super lucky and no injuries, no suspensions, no problems at all, even then it's going to affect your performances going through to the weekend if Newcastle make it far into Europe. So I think that is going to be a problem for Newcastle, and I don't think we're going to finish 4th again. I can see us finishing like 7th. It is possible. Maybe we can squeak into like a top 4, especially as Eddie Howe has come out and said publicly he's looking to sign more players. If he does, that's very possible. We could make a repeat performance. I think Tonali is a phenomenal signing. One of the best signings of any team, actually, this season. He is fantastic. I've watched him in the friendlies. I've watched him a lot as well when he was playing for AC Milan. Very, very good player, and I think he's perfect for Newcastle. Harvey Barnes going to be a very solid replacement as well for Alan Maximan, and also obviously offer us a little bit more depth in terms of those winger positions. Livramento is going to be a very solid sort of, I don't know if he'll be getting any starting matches, especially with Kieran Trippier and the defence that we have right now. But to have a player like that up your sleeve, if you do have issues with injuries or needing to rest Trippier or somebody else who's, let's be honest, he's getting on a little bit now. He's 32, 33. I think it's a very good signing from Southampton. But ultimately, I think squad depth is going to be Newcastle's biggest flaw this season. And if a couple players go off the boil. However, when you consider we have like Isak, you've got Bruno Gomes, Joe Linton, Tonali now, a fantastic defence, like one of the best defences in the league. Gordon, I'm still not completely sold on Gordon as a player, if I'm being honest with you. I think he might end up being a bit of a dud. Wilson, there's so many players in this squad right now that are very, very high class. I think the problem is, though, once you get past our starting 11, that's where you start to come apart a little bit at the seams. So Newcastle in 7th. In 6th, I'm going to go with Aston Villa. That is going to be a surprise for some people, but I'm so impressed with Emery's turnaround of this club, and some of their signings are very good. Tielemans in from Leicester. They got Pau Torres in from Villarreal and Diaby from Bayer Leverkusen. And Diaby in particular was being chased down by a lot of clubs who were very interested in him. I know Newcastle were linked with him at one point. I think I heard like Liverpool were linked with him and a bunch of other teams as well. So for Aston Villa to get him is fantastic for them. And Emery has just been a revelation for this Aston Villa team. When you consider how poor they were looking under Steven Gerrard to now, it is night and day. And Aston Villa have every chance of catapulting themselves up the league into 6th position. I think they will pip Newcastle to the post purely off that European football spot. And yeah, I think Aston Villa, this is going to be a great season. And it needs to be, right? Because Aston Villa are a huge club. Birmingham's biggest club. For the longest time, they've been a bit of a dud in the Premier League. They've always been sort of mid-table to lower mid-table mediocrity. They deserve to be up there as one of the best teams. And I think right now, we're going to start to see them live up to that potential a little bit more in these next coming seasons, especially if Emery stays and he continues to have as much impact as he's currently having. Manchester United, I'm going to have in the 3rd spot. Done some good business. I also think their squad depth is very, very strong. And they're just looking better and better as time goes on. They really warmed up towards the last end of the last half, I should say, of last season. Newcastle and Man United were neck and neck, but Man United just pipped us to the post, deservedly so. Mason Mount being brought in, Onana being brought in, and the Haaland as well, who apparently is kind of like a Haaland-esque striker, very physical. Doubt he's going to have the same kind of impact as Haaland did, but we'll see what happens. He doesn't need to. He doesn't need to be an Erling Haaland. No one else on the planet is. If he can be like an 8 out of 10 version of Haaland, well, that's good enough for most clubs. And that's probably what Man United actually need. Whether he's ready or not yet, though, is yet to be seen. Because he may be one of those players that has tons of hype and doesn't really deliver as he comes in from Atalanta, which is obviously playing in the Serie A is very different to playing in the Premier League. Now, I went back and forth a lot on Chelsea and Liverpool, if I'm being honest, but I'm going to go Chelsea 4th and Liverpool in 5th. And the reason for that is Chelsea have Pochettino. I love him as a manager. I think he's a fantastic choice for Chelsea. They've had a lot of issues with management over the last however many years. I think he's a manager you can properly get behind. And some of their transfers have been fantastic. And Nkunku from Leipzig, great pickup. They also got in Moreira from Benfica. And Gabriel from Santos, I think, is going to be a good player as well. Decisive from Monaco, Sanchez from Brighton. These are all good signings. These are good signings. And there's also a good squad there as well from Chelsea. I think that Pochettino can really make the most out of. They have lost quite a few players, though. They really have. They lost Kante, Koulibaly, Kovacic. Mendy is also gone. Havertz is gone. Loftus-Cheek is gone. Mason Mount is gone. Like, there's a lot of players that they've lost in amongst all of this. Pulisic also gone. However, I don't think there's necessarily that much that they've lost that they would have been looking to play with in their starting 11. Like, some of those players certainly are, but I feel like Pochettino is going to get the most out of the squad that they currently have. And Chelsea's another team that probably needs to offload a lot of these players, right? Like, because of wages and all kinds of other stuff. Like, I feel like Chelsea's going to be good enough. Now, the other reason, there's two sides to this. One is Chelsea, I think, are going to be good enough. And another is that Liverpool have really struggled with this transfer window when you consider some of the players they've also lost. Roberto Firmino, gone. Naby Keita, James Milner, both gone. They've also lost Jordan Henderson, who's a massive, massive loss, the captain, kind of the talisman of the team. Fabinho's gone as well. Like, this is brutal for Liverpool. And they brought in McAllister, who's a good signing from Brighton, sure. Additionally, they've got a guy, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce his name, So Bosley. I know I'm pronouncing that name wrong. Do feel free to butcher me in the comment section from Leipzig. I'll just call him Dominic. Big Dom, in from Leipzig. And those are good signings for sure, but they have lost so much in the process. And I think people expecting that Liverpool are going to bounce back in the season and be like jostling for first or second position are just mad. I don't see it happening. I don't see Liverpool having enough squad, especially when you consider how influential and how big in the hierarchy the likes of Jordan Henderson is, Fabinho, Milner. Like, these are big players in the dressing room. They're now gone. I think it's going to take Liverpool a while under Klopp to build that back up again. I could be proven wrong, but that's how I'm feeling right now. So this is my first to 20th position on the teams. We've got Manchester City winning, Arsenal second, Manchester United third, Chelsea in fourth, Liverpool fifth, Aston Villa sixth, Newcastle in seventh, Tottenham in eighth, Brighton ninth, West Ham 10th, Everton in 11th, Burnley in 12th, Brentford 13th, Fulham 14th, Crystal Palace 15th, Wolves 16th, Sheffield United 17th, and then in the relegation zone, Nottingham Forest in 18th, Bournemouth in 19th, and finally Luton Town in 20th. Apologies if my voice has been going in and out. I'm a bit sick at the moment, but hopefully I portrayed my opinions and was able to explain them thoroughly enough where you understand, even if you disagree with me, that you're able to understand my thoughts and reasonings for doing so. But I'm really curious to see what you guys think about this. Do you agree with all of my positions? I'm sure a lot of people disagree on some of these. What do you think? Comment in the section below. Make sure you also check the description box as well for my Premier League, Fantasy League that you can get joined into. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Hopefully you'll leave me some recommendations and some ideas on what other content I should release on Premier League throughout the year. And I'll make sure that I get on top of that because I'm really looking forward to this season. I think this is going to be a really interesting season. A lot of teams are peaking at a good time. There's a lot of hype around a lot of these teams. I love to see Aston Villa doing well again. Newcastle, obviously, I'm a bit biased on that one. Tottenham is a massive question mark. This top four, also a huge question mark. And the relegation battle, I honestly think is going to be incredibly spicy. And it's going to have a lot of twists and turns. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.